golfers, in Shakespeare's famous play Hamlet, the hero says, "To be or not to be," as he discusses the importance of life and death. So, as golfers have made such a life and death issue of the flat left wrist at impact versus the flip or scoop or cast, which results in a cupped lead wrist, I will discuss the flipping phenomenon, no pun intended, in scientific terms. Why is the flip movement so terrible? Because it is said to cause inconsistency of ball flight and often a two-way miss. What does a flip look like? It has a lead wrist which is extended or cupped at impact. The opposite is a flat or slightly flexed or bowed wrist at impact. For many years, golfers have been told to work towards a flat lead wrist and exaggerate that feeling with drills that encourage a bowing of the lead wrist to get what used to be called shaft lean. In a shaft lean, the shaft leans slightly towards target. Some folks these days refer to it as handle dragging, and many mean that in a not good way, so that currently there is a lot of confusion in the golf industry as to best hand positions at impact. In my opinion, the slightly cupped lead wrist at impact does not cause any issues and is a function of hand position with respect to the lead thigh, center, or trail thigh, as well as how bent the elbows are. As long as the club face is able to face target at impact, the cupping in the wrist does not matter, which means that unless the wrist flip is accompanied by lead forearm supination, the cupping should not matter. It is forearm rotation that might prevent the club face from being square at impact, and this is a movement that should happen just after and not before impact. In a recent video titled Full Swing Insights by famous golf instructor Brian Manzella, presented by Hack Motion Golf, he says he has gone from touting the flat lead wrist to believing that some slight cupping is fine because the flat or bowed wrist changes the length of the radius of the lead arm club lever at impact. What is truly dangerous is the position of the hands in space at impact. If the hands are in one spot at address, at which time presumably the golfer has the club face square to target and the body segments correctly aligned, should not the body as well as the arms return to as close a position to that as possible to ensure ball striking consistency? Why do all these golfers have their hands so far ahead of where they started out? The answer is a lack of space, folks. Space for the trail elbow to straighten out in the sagittal plane of its design and not be forced to push the shaft targetwards in an attempt to somehow try to straighten itself from its compressed position at half downswing. How and when to create the space? Let's look at Bryson DeChambeau as an example for where he might create space to avoid inconsistency of hand locations between address and impact. At address, he appears to have a lot of space. In fact, it might be too much space between his body and arms, but that's a discussion for another day. A more effective method for creating space is by being more upright in stance, because the idea is to create space for the trail elbow so that it is not excessively flexed close to impact. At the end of his backswing, he has literally moved every body segment to the max. From there, and especially during the mere 0.26 seconds that his downswing lasts, his central nervous system or CNS must find a strategy to somehow deliver the club to the ball. And somehow is not good enough for golf because somehow is what causes inconsistency. While a golfer might try to move one body part before another, specifically the lower body before the upper body, to get correct sequencing, the CNS must find an overall strategy given that time is very short. One aid it uses in these circumstances is gravity. And thus, while a supremely talented golfer like Bryson will get some sequencing going, it is never enough. The arms, torso, and legs have moved every which way going back, and to sync them up perfectly requires nothing short of divine intervention. Absent such intervention, a golfer's CNS does its poor best and drops everything down practically together. All the parts of the brain and spinal cord are screaming to one another, "Get to the ball, hurry, hurry, hurry," and asking the muscles why they won't cooperate. At the same time, the muscles are yelling back, "We are trying our best, but the joints have been positioned too awkwardly." And then the CNS simply decides unilaterally that it will follow the path of least resistance and drop everything down together as much as conscious thought will permit. You can see this in how many body parts have dropped down, the trail, shoulder, hip, and knee especially, and then close to impact, the trail shoulder blade has protracted way forward, and by impact, the head has lowered too. No discrimination for our human CNS. Every body part is treated equally, and everything is dropped down using the strategy of gravity. As a result of many body parts which have been moved in random sequence in the backswing and everything trying to sync up in the downswing, see how different Bryson looks at impact from what he looks like at address. This, despite his trying to position his arms and hands at address for what they will look like at impact rather than the other way around. I leave it to you to read for yourselves what his latest theory of arm position is. His excessive trail side buckling causes a complete lack of space for smooth trail elbow extension, which is probably the reason for the big targetward push his trail elbow makes to get the club to impact. And this can often lead to inconsistency. The main takeaway from this post is that the body and arms must naturally and without any artificial starting poses arrive at the ball in as similar a manner to address as possible, with the upper and lower bodies stacked on top of one another, and the arms, regardless of wrist angles, should look similar to address too. One final piece of information you will not get anywhere else. Try this yourself. Pick up your forearm in front of you with your hand open and your wrist flat. Now quickly make a fist. Do you see how the wrist immediately bends backwards? That happens because when muscles such as the finger flexors are able to bend both the wrists and the fingers, they suffer from an active insufficiency and cannot flex equally forcefully at both the wrist and the fingers. So, with a slight wrist cup at impact, the lead hand can hold on to the club better. Who would not want that? Golfers, the human central nervous system is crying out for help in managing your golf swing. For how long will you overestimate its abilities? Make its job easier. To be kind to both your body and your brain, use a no brainer swing. And to do that, get in touch.